Hey guys, Diane here with the Green Eye Monster Review, and today I am doing a follow-up list to a video I made about a year ago. I took a little hiatus from YouTube, but I am now back. And the first video I wanted to do was my disturbing TBR review. These books are ridiculous in the worst and the best way. Some of them, you're just going to have to burn after you're reading. But hit that like and subscribe button and we'll get into it. Okay, so I'm really excited to get to the list, but first I was just going to let you guys know that I did not read half of the books. And this isn't anything new. This is something that I had thought about even a year ago when I made the list. So when I started it, I had Fox Hollow Farm by Rich Estep, which I hated. I did start, and it was nothing like I expected. It was more about, I guess, the hauntings of the actual house that the murders had occurred in. They ran through the serial killer and what he had done really quickly. I don't even remember what they were talking about, but it was just not a good book. And now I realize why I had never really heard of it, because it sucked. There was also Wasp Factory by Ian Banks, and I really wanted to read that book, but I just, for one reason or another, I didn't. It's still on my TBR, and I feel like I just replaced it with other books that I felt like fit the list a little better. And then I also had The Collector by John Fowles on there, and I'm glad I didn't read this, because The Collector is about this guy. He ends up following this woman. It's almost a baby reindeer situation. He's a stalker, and he ends up kidnapping her and being like, hey, I already got you here, you may as well love me. But I didn't read it just because I don't really remember why. It's a year ago, but I took that off my list and I kind of replaced it with something else. So I just wanted to let you guys know that I'm actually a horrible list maker and I don't do what I say I'm going to do. So if you're going to subscribe to this channel, just bear with me, okay? I'm only human. But I'm going to go from the least disturbing to the most disturbing. So the least disturbing, we have 100% Match by Patrick C. Harrison III. And this was a really fun read. I actually listened to this on Audible. What really caught my eye was the cover. The cover is amazing. It looks like someone's demented dream of themselves. But this was a really fun read. There's some nasty, disgusting, disturbing, I couldn't even eat out after I read this book. It was just, and at first I was like going along, listening to it, and I'm like, why would you do that? Even to yourself, it's just weird. It's off the cuff, it's just random. But this is a book I would recommend if you're in a reading slump, if you're looking to be not only disgusted but surprised. It was a fun ride. So I would say if you're in a reading slump, or if you're just looking for some weird, nasty stuff to listen to, this is definitely up your alley. Future Diane here, and I just wanted to tell you guys that I actually forgot in editing to really even tell you what 100% Match was about. So this is a book about a man. He's trying to find his match. He's trying to find someone that matches his level of crazy, someone that enjoys the same odd, weird, disgusting things that he does. So he's going on all these websites, going on blind dates, trying to figure out what's his cup of tea. Or who can handle his cup of tea, maybe. But it ends up being, it just goes from bad to worse to just insane. So this is just one of those books that's really going to take you for a wild ride. And at the end, you're really going to be questioning what just happened. So, okay, back to past Diane. And next we have Found. And I read the physical copy of Found because I had the physical copy, and I prefer to read physical copies. It doesn't always happen, but luckily with this one it did. So it was Found by Todd Rigney, and this book was really good. I absolutely love this book. I laughed out loud. There's some really, really funny parts in here. It's actually really sad, and it's almost like a drama to me. But there's some funny aspects, because the boy in the book, he's only in 5th grade. He's still kind of in that stage where he's a little boy. He thinks farts are funny and all these other things. But he's also going through a lot of trauma. So he's being made fun of at school, a lot of bullying. His brother's hiding heads under his bed. There's a lot going on here. And so he's just trying to cope with it in any way he knows how. But this book was so good. Another one I would recommend if you're in a reading slump, or if you're just looking for something that isn't too long that you're going to be engrossed with. Because I read this book in one sitting, and it is pretty short. It's not that long. So this is another, like I said, that if you're in a reading slump, or if you're looking for just something weird, this is where it's at. And then next we have Unspeakable Things by Jess Lourey. And I could see why maybe you're thinking that isn't really that disturbing, but it is. And I feel like the reason it is, for one, this is based on a true story, somewhat of a true story that happened to the author. So little boys start to go missing in this town, and they're being returned, but they're being returned and they're different. They are acting out. They're not the same as they were before they left. So they're trying to figure out like what's going on. And it all centers around these two sisters that live on a farm. And from the outside, it looks like, oh, they have, a really happy family. Obviously, they don't. But this book kept me on the edge of my seat. And I think what made it so disturbing is that there's so many kids that are going through things like this, and there's so many people around them, but nobody to help. And it really kept you on the edge of your seat. There was one part, this might be a spoiler to some people, but there was one part where you feel like you're, in the whole book, I feel like you're scared that you're going to be the next one, that it's going to be you. I guess that's not a spoiler, because I was thinking about, like, maybe I shouldn't say that. But it's so good. It's so good. It's not the most disturbing. I know a lot of people are like, that's really not that disturbing. But if you really think about it, and the more you think about it, it is. So this is a phenomenal book. Another one, if you're in a reading slump, and this is really fast paced, it's something that I read in, one sitting, because I just couldn't put it down. And the cover is amazing too. It's another really good cover. And then we have, The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. And I know what you're thinking. I've already heard of that book. Well, if you haven't, this is a very disturbing, true story about two sisters. Their family, their parents die, and they are sent to live with their aunt, who is a sadistic, complete psychopath. And I don't know, I just went blank. But, so the aunt, she's a complete psychopath, and what ends up happening is the two sisters are basically just tortured, and all these things are happening in this neighborhood, and they're not only tortured by the aunt, but they're tortured by other children in the neighborhood. And this is a true story. And this is by Jack Ketchum. If you've read any of his other books, he writes a lot of horror. He writes a lot of extreme horror. I read another book of his. It was about cannibals, and his writing is just, it's almost too descriptive. It's almost like, you're like in the room while all these things are happening. And this book just broke my heart. It was so sad. I'd actually heard about this story. I had watched the documentary many years ago. And I told myself, I'm not going to read the book. I don't need to. It's too much. The documentary ruined like 3 weeks of my life when I saw it. But I felt like if I was going to do a disturbing book list, that I felt like this book really needed to be on it. So I went ahead and read it. And as I suspected, it was it was horrific, and it ruined my day. Not only my day, probably my week at the time. There's still spots in that book that I'm like, oh, this is so sad. But the book was addictive. I did listen to this one. I didn't read the physical copy, but it's definitely something that you're not going to be able to put down. It's just it's too much almost. So if you're really looking to just really read something that's never going to leave you, then that's definitely the book. And then next we have The Playground by Aron Beauregard. And I actually met this author at a book signing. He was very nice, very timid, very not psychotic like you would think he is in the book. I think he signed this too. Pretty sure. Oh, I hope you didn't play too rough. Seems like someone, I don't know. But anyway, so I got this signed, and he was very nice. He was very sweet. So this is a book about a sadistic woman, another sadistic woman, that has too much money and too much time on her hands. So she is under the guise of building these playgrounds around the city. She's supposed to be trying to help the the communities. They're trying to build playgrounds, and she seeks out these families that are down on their luck. Each one of them, I think all of them, have either 2 or 3 kids in their family. They're kind of stretched thin. They're either having money problems, or they're going through something. And so she comes and she's like, oh, I'll give you $3,000 if you and your kids want to come try out these playgrounds that I'm making. Why on earth, even if you are going through something, you would say yes to that? I don't know, but she found the right people. And so they come, and the kids are in this enclosure, basically, where they're playing on the playground equipment, and under the guise of, we're just going to watch them play, and the parents are watching over them. And this, I wouldn't say this is a spoiler, but the playground equipment is like, there's like saws and stuff on the slide. It's horrific. So they're watching as all of this is transpiring, all this is happening to their children. There's also a boy that she had adopted because she can't have kids. So he is kind of caught in between stopping it and being a victim himself, and there's a lot that comes into play. There's a lot about this book. This is a longer book. Usually extreme horror isn't as long. This is like 300 pages, and this is just 300 pages of disgusting gore. And I mean, in some ways I feel like this is the most disturbing. It's not, it's the second on my list, but in some ways some of the things that happen in here, I'm like, oh, it was just too much. And I'm probably not going to read another book like this. I don't think this is probably something that I don't know if I really even recommend it for you to read. If you're really looking for something that is just unjustifiably disgusting and gory and horrific in so many ways you could never even imagine, this is, you might want to check it out. But it's not something that I would say, hey, I recommend this. It is a good book. I couldn't put it down, so take that with how you want to. But that was Playground by Aron Beauregard. And for my number one, this is a book I got actually off of TikTok. There was a guy that kept talking about how much he loved it, and I read the back and I was like, oh, that sounds like it would be a good fit for my list. So that is The End of Alice by A.M. Holmes, and this is my number one. This is my top pick for a lot of different reasons. So this is about two people. One is a convicted pedophile, and he is in prison, and he is writing and corresponding with a young college co-ed girl. And at first it's kind of like, what do they have in common? Why are they talking? You find out soon enough why they're talking and what they have in common. But this book was not only disturbing and disgusting, it was also so well written, and it flowed so well, so poetic in certain ways, that you almost didn't really realize what you were reading until you're like, what? Oh my gosh. So this is not a book that I would recommend to everybody. It's definitely something that you really want to prepare yourself for. And I wasn't prepared for it, because I did read the book. I read the synopsis, and I was thinking I was prepared for it. But, you look at the cover and you're like, oh, that's probably, it's really not that bad. It has a butterfly on it. But this was something that I will never forget. And in some ways, I don't know if that's something that you want to happen to you. But if you do, this was just such a well-written book. It was so good. Everything about it was, I don't even know who comes up, like, in your mind, you're like, what, I'm going to write a book, but I'm going to be really freaking nasty. So I don't know. It's just really, but at the same time, I loved it. So this is definitely something that I would recommend. A lot of these books I feel like on this list are books to kind of get you out of a slump. They might put you in a slump afterwards, a different kind of slump afterwards, but it's definitely something I would say that's worth checking out. So let me know if you guys have read any of those books, or if you have any recommendations that, are maybe not as demented as some of these, but along those lines. With, spooky season coming up, I do like a good slasher. So, hit me up in the comments, let me know what you guys are reading, and hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.